Hello?
All right.
Hello?
Hi, Commissioner Briscoe. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay.
Okay, great. I'm going to close the executive session and reconvene the public meeting. Before we get started, I'm going to start by acknowledging we're on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish peoples, including both the Lummi and Nooksack nations. I'll start with roll call. Commissioner Briscoe.
Here.
Commissioner Bell.
Here.
Commissioner Shepard is also here. All three commissioners are present. Do we have anyone signed up for public comment?
No.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read our upcoming advisory meetings, and everyone else can decide if they're going to. I was going to let them decide if they want to speak while I read the advisory meeting the schedule, and they'll get their courage up. First is Marina Advisory Committee. Our MAC meets at Tuesday, February 11th, 2020 at 6 p.m. here in Commission Chambers. Technical Advisory Committee and the TAC meets Thursday, March 12th, 2020 at 9:30 a.m. in the ARF Conference Room on 2005 West Bakerview Road at the Bellingham International Airport. And the Bellingham International Airport Advisory Committee, or the BIAC, meets Thursday, March 12th, 2020 at 5 p.m. in the ARF Conference Room, same location, 2005 West Bakerview Road at the Bellingham International Airport. Anyone change their mind about speaking? Nope. Okay. Gary, if you please.
A motion to approve consent agenda items A through E.
Commissioner Briscoe, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Commissioner Bell?
None.
I don't have any either.
A motion to approve consent agenda items A through E.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yes.
Commissioner Bell?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Passes 3-0. On to our presentations. Brian, I think you're up twice today?
No, just this one, then
Just
I'll
this
be
one.
passing that on to
Oh,
Greg.
okay, great.
All right, well, good afternoon, Commissioners. Brian Gowan, Director of Environmental and Planning Services. So first and foremost, I'm very, very happy to say that this waterfront district update has absolutely nothing to do with the sub-area plan amendment, because thanks to the Port Commission's support, as well as City Council and City staff, that process is wrapped up. Very tail end of last year, we got the sub-area plan and all the associated documents approved, adopted, and in place. Right now, where we're at on that is we're in the final phases of just cleaning up the documents, getting the executed versions, removing the red lines, updating the maps to be appropriate, or making sure they're all dialed in, and then we'll get those posted on the city and port websites and have those ready for public distribution here in the coming next few weeks. And the holidays and the winter storm kind of threw a little bit of that into a wrench into that. So we're working on that. But that's all I have to say about that. So we're moving on to other things. Specifically, looking at more of the kind of fun on-the-ground work that we're looking forward to accomplishing in 2020. And this presentation's focused specifically on some of the temporary and interim uses, really building on the success of the pump track and the bike park. And coming out of that, really looking to activate the site, get more people down there, broaden the base of people that can access and use the site while the slower paced, just by the nature of it, is development occurs over time. So this is what we're going to be working on in 2020. And specifically, in the Commission approved 2020 budget, we actually have a budget objective to promote interim uses in the downtown waterfront, including public access, community events, activities for all ages, and temporary art facilities, et cetera. So building on that concept, we actually had some ideas in mind from the staff, but we also, there's been a spur of ideas coming from outside sources that we really support and wanted to take to the next level. So you'll see a trend here in the things that we're planning on focusing on this year. So obviously we have the waterfront bike park and the interim parking that was done last year that really spurred a lot of activity. There's always people down there really utilizing that in a really fun way, getting a variety of people down there. But based on that, we saw some needs as well, like restroom facilities, some power and water. So we're looking at a few things. And I'll go through these in these slides, these next few bullet points with individual slides. And what I was hoping to do is, because we have a broad set of topics here and projects, is I'll go through each one individually, and then if you do have specific questions, we can come back to them at the end, and I can pull up some of the project managers that are working on those if you have specific questions. So But what I was going to go through was the Northwest Tune-Up Festival, the temporary restrooms and lawn and open space, the pop-up container village, as well as this interim placemaking idea sessions, and to go through each one of those as what we've got planned for this year. So the Northwest Tune-Up is really a very cool festival that's actually a group has been working on it for a number of years. It's really finally coming into its own and into fruition. It's currently planned as a 3-day music, beer, bike festival, but it's really broader than that and aimed at the entire community, looking at how a variety of different interests could be satisfied through this 3-day festival. And that's reflected in the fact that they have received the signature grant from the Tourism Board, which is similar to what Seafeast had for the 3 years worth of funding. So they have some funding for 2020, 2021, and 2022. They're currently working with the Downtown Partnership and others to make sure that this is a festival and an event that not only benefits the biking community and the waterfront, but also downtown Bellingham, Whatcom County in general. There's going to be events down at Chuckanut Mountains, Galbraith, as well as on the waterfront. So we're really trying to be as broad and inclusive as possible. They're currently underway with securing permits and all the approvals they need to make sure that this is a safe and accessible and fun event. And they clearly have a lot of partnerships that they're building with the Tourism Board, City of Bellingham, Port of Bellingham, WMBC, Whatcom Mountain Bike Coalition, Recreation Northwest, some outdoor type of nonprofits, as well as they're looking to secure sponsorships from private entities and that sort of thing. So they're really building this with a goal of having the June 5th through 7th as the start of this hopefully long-term signature event for Whatcom County and Bellingham. And what you'll start to see here as I go through these projects, you'll see a theme. These are kind of standalone projects, but really they're not being done in a vacuum. They really work well together, and that's intentional. Like I said, we have a broad group working on this on each one of these projects, but they really all are complementary of each other, and that's because we're working as a group to kind of make sure that we get efficiencies out of these projects and that we can kind of get the most out of our funding. So this is one of the projects, the temporary restrooms and lawn, that we saw as a need just based on the popularity of the pump track, honestly, and the fact that the Waypoint Park didn't have restrooms constructed. They were hoping that the Granary Market would be open and help provide some relief for that, but that hasn't happened yet, unfortunately. So we decided to go ahead and take it upon ourselves to put in a temporary mobile restroom. So they're not like porta potties or Santa cans. It's actually a mobile unit that Rob saw, a great example of this up at Mount Baker ski area, where it was a trailer mounted, heated and enclosed, semi-permanent, but can be moved structure that can provide restroom facilities. That'll also bring in power and water to those facilities and a sewer connection. And that's going to be connected out off of Laurel Street across from the board mill with being able to spread out the accessibility of restrooms, because eventually that market will open in the granary, and that'll be, so we don't want to double up and have those two facilities right next to each other. What it also does is it brings in power that could be overhead power that could service the potential stage that will be part of the Tune-Up Festival on the backside of the lawn. It also can bring overhead power into where the pop-up market can go to provide those facilities with some power sources. And additionally, we are constructing a 66,000 square foot lawn area that can be used just for the general public, as well as a part of the Tune-Up Festival events itself. Areas that people that are there with their kids can go and hang out while their kids are on the pump track, or while their grandparents are on the pump track, and their kids can be playing on the lawn. And so right now where we're at with that is that permits are submitted and in for review by the city right now. And we're hoping for construction to start in March with completion in May, so that'll be ready for the Tune-Up Festival event. The next one, and again, you'll see a theme here. These all are coming together with similar facilities by design, is the pop-up container village. So this is one, if you might recall, we talked about the pop-up container village as a concept that was out there with a small lawn in front of the digesters, some containers that could wrap around that lawn, maybe with some food truck spots. But as the tune-up folks came online and as the lawn started to expand and grow, and that's something that we took on, the container village thought it would be a better fit to be kind of sandwiched between all those activities and over by the restrooms closer to Laurel, spread out the event and the accessibility, and it's an easy, accessible way to kind of maximize the use of that space. And so what they've come back with is some series of revisions to their plan. And what they're looking at now is a kind of a seasonal container village that will be for food vendors, maybe a beer garden, ice cream, maybe some retails, kind of small knickknack type of retail spaces, but not going to be anything like a temporary office space or a work space that's occupied permanently. And I'll tell you a little bit about that and why. And they're looking at a phased-in approach with up to 15 containers in 2020. I think that might be the maximum that you could do on the first year. I think that they might be even less than that realistically, just to get it going. But they do anticipate a phased-in approach. They're currently working with the city planning group, and I'll be honest, the city team has been great about this. They know this is a unique situation. They're trying to find as much flexibility in their code as possible, providing the pop-up folks with lots of ideas to say, hey, if you want to do this, here's where your limitations are going to be. So why don't you go this route or that route? And that was the example of having an occupied space. You really would have to meet all the building codes, insulation, all the vapor controls, just to say if you have an occupied space, you'd have to do it that way. So look at things that allows people to pass through, but they're not hanging out in there for the general public. But a worker could be in there cooking or serving ice cream and that sort of thing, as long as there's an egress and that sort of thing. So they're working with them on how the timeframes work, and they've been really supportive of this as a concept. And so with all that in mind, the pop-up folks have been coordinating with the Tune-Up Festival, and they're again hoping to be open with some vendors in June for the festival, and then grow that over the next few seasons. We're currently working with them on a license and access agreement. And one other note, on all of these, most of these this is a very high level, quick review. Most of these have individual agreements or something that will come to the commission with a lot more detail, an MOU with the tune-up folks, a license agreement with the pop-up container village and that sort of thing. So there'll be a lot more opportunities to get into the nuts and bolts and details of these when we bring those forward as well.
Hey, Brian, you mentioned the pop-up folks. Who is this group? And if somebody in the county has a food truck or an idea for a container business, June's right around the corner. Who do they contact, and how do they start that process?
There's three partners that are working on it. Christy Park, Katie Scher, and Mark Schintaffer right now, and they're just the group that has brought this to us. I don't know that they have formed a formal LLC yet, but that's the business group that we've been working with, and we will be bringing. I'll get their contact information and I'll pass that on to you and see how they are marketing. So I know they have been reaching out to. They have business connections throughout the community and have been reaching out quite a bit to try to get interested vendors. So I don't know what they're calling themselves yet. So I just say pop-up folks.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. And then the last one we have here, this is a little different. Those are all like kind of project-oriented items. This is really more of a series of placemaking idea sessions. And if you know the concept of the Kapow events that were done locally, they were like one-night events of idea sessions where people from the creative community would come forward with a proposal. And it was at Mount Baker Theater. It was on the stage. It was a big event, one-night event where people would bring some of the craziest ideas you could think of, like the hamster wheel, but super cool at the same time. And then there would be a series of judges that would evaluate those as were they realistic or not, and could we look at implementing them. So that was the original idea. We had actually thought about doing that down on the waterfront, but rather than, after working with the folks who held those events, rather than doing one large event, we've narrowed down to doing a 9-part, like smaller focused series of events that does a couple things. One, it provides this idea generation on a reoccurring basis with a variety of different people involved with different specialties. So, for example, we could have one of the events focused on fabrication ideas. So, folks that are welders and that sort of thing. What kind of events or things would they want to see down there? There's videographers and other creative folks that would maybe have highlighting a series of events or that sort of thing. So, it's really a series of idea sessions just to get the creative community talking and working together. And they had a lot of success with that concept, which was I think it was a morning coffee series that was over a series of months. That was the events that bore out the Bellingham flag. So it was a series of designers getting together talking about, hey, what do you want to see? What would you do? And the Bellingham flag was born out of just this kind of reoccurring event. And so we're trying to capture that concept to see if we could get some cool ideas on what we could do in down on the waterfront. This is not a planning effort. This is not a, hey, what should you build to make parks perfect? It's like a, hey, what could we do for a temporary event down there in 2021? And there's no obligation on our part to do those events, but some ideas will be generated out of that discussion. So we do have some partnerships right now with the Whatcom Community Foundation, Sustainable Connections, Downtown Partnership, and we're looking to engage in that, starting that series of events here in the coming month or two. So, and that's what we've got on the agenda for 2020 for interim ideas. So with that, I'd be happy to go back to any of those if you have any questions or however you want to go forward.
Commissioner Bell, any questions?
Yeah, mine is on the pop-up. Has the city discussed zoning and the actual operational difficulties of these with communities that have established these to see whether or not our codes are even relevant or something we should be concerned about? I mean, I would point them to a number of cities that have these containers.
Yeah, they twisted a little bit, I guess I'd say, is they are trying to be as flexible as possible to say, hey, how can we, regardless of the code, say yes to this? And so how can we say, is this a temporary, that's why it's probably a seasonal, a temporary setup. And then they can be flexible in what they're requiring. Obviously, there's gonna be health and safety things, it's life safety things that have to be done right. But if it's a temporary event, they can be a lot more flexible and then on a seasonal basis, learn from, okay, what happened last year that worked and didn't work, and adjust. And then if they do want more permanent type of structures, then they can start working within the codes a little bit more, robustly. But as far as the uses and the land use, this is totally allowed. I mean, this is something we could do. So there's no pushback from that. If the question is, are there lessons learned on some of the negative aspects? That's a good question. I could look and see about that.
Well, you're going to have a whole smorgasbord of vendors, right? And so they're not all going to apply, all the rules aren't going to apply the same to every single container.
Right.
And so my hope is that they will look at each one as an individual and not paint the entire village with a broad brush.
Yeah, no, that's a good clarification. That's correct. That's how they are looking at it. And what the pop-up folks have looked at is trying to create a generic container that has a lot of flexibility, almost regardless of the use. Like there will be clearly like a food vending type of one, and then there's a retail type of one, and the openings, and then whatever goes in there is going to be fine, and there shouldn't be a problem. If they want to do certain type of cooking, that's where they get some issues with, like the fire marshal. They have to make sure that all is done correctly. But that's going to be on a case-by-case basis, not a broad brush.
So you just described a business model to me that is interesting. So they're basically going to be the providers of all the containers. So the vendor won't be able to come in with their own design and establish their own. Then the vendor would be responsible for the zoning and the health department regs. But you're basically describing a model where they're going to be the sole provider of the containers.
I think that's the general idea. They may be able to, I'm sure they would work. If there's a reason that the particular vendor wanted to do something custom, I'm sure they'd be happy to work with them. But the idea is to start off with a broad brush approval from the city to say, yeah, if you do it this way, you've got a lot of flexibility. But then if a very specialized vendor wanted to do something specifically, they may have to go work individually with the city or the health department. But they're trying to get as much easy yes approvals right out of the gate just to get it going.
Yeah, it's not my business, but I think that's short-sighted to not let the vendors come in with their own concept.
Yeah, and they very well may. And I can run that by them.
But
I haven't
it's
gotten
their business.
No. Yeah, I haven't gotten the impression that they're saying it's this or nothing.
Yeah.
I think they're just saying we want to be as flexible as possible.
Yeah, that's all I had. Otherwise, everything else sounds great. Thanks.
Great.
Commissioner Briscoe?
No, Brian did a very good job of explaining everything.
Okay,
Good.
great. And I don't have any further questions, but you guys are really continuing to take this idea of getting people down there and activating the space. And I think that it's ready for this, and people are ready in the community to use it in this way. And I think that you're going to see a lot of public support for this.
And we may look even for other smaller, like random things, like put up a basketball hoop just somewhere and see if people can shoot hoops. We'll look for little things like that that's easy to do.
Somebody did request pickleball under the
Yeah.
under the bridge from me, so.
I'm meeting the pickleball folks next week.
Oh, good, look at that. Well, I knew they were asking the right person, so. Rob does have an interest in pickleball himself, so.
You know, in my age group, that's a big deal. My demographic, yeah.
Pickleball, hipster pickleball, totally.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, thank you.
It's the slideshow button. Good evening, Commissioners. Greg McHenry, Senior Planner for the Port of Bellingham. Here to give you a quick little update on the Blaine Wharf District Master Plan Amendment. This is a slide of the existing plan for the Wharf Loop Trail. And a little background for this amendment. It derived out of a shoreline variance permit when we moved the cell tower from the Blaine Marina buildings, which have since been demolished. And the tenant put up a tower on the other side of the industrial peninsula. And there was the issue in Area 7 where there was a proposed or visionary public trail bifurcating areas 6 and 7. And the port stated that we would prefer to address a change to that trail in a comprehensive manner and proposed an amendment to the Wharf District Master Plan. And on the next slide is basically our proposal, and you can see in the yellow area, there's no trail segment through areas 6 and 7. And in exchange for that, we've proposed more of a scenic overlook in the area of the Mid-Bay Dock, which, let's see, I don't know, which is right across the way from the Lighthouse Park. There's it lines up nicely with an existing crosswalk there. There was a planning commission meeting last month where the planning commission had a bunch of discussion whether an update to the Wharf District Plan was enough. They have real concerns about the realisticness of like the over the boardwalk area in Area 1. And should the whole Wharf District Master Plan be revisited and revised? So that was some of the discussion. It was tabled at last meeting, and the Planning Commission gave a bunch of additional recommended updates to specific language, which there's another Planning Commission meeting tomorrow night, which those will be discussed again. And it looks like it'll move forward. I'm not exactly sure if they'll be making their recommendation tomorrow night yet or not, but we're hopeful that they will. One additional recommendation that they had was that the preferred alternative for the Marine Drive be attached to the Wharf District Master Plan as an exhibit. And so that'll be done as well. As far as next steps, as I mentioned, there's a Planning Commission meeting tomorrow night, which we hope to hear more, and we'll be able to get you those textual changes that they're recommending to the existing plan. Assuming that they make their recommendation tomorrow night, there should be a city council meeting following that probably within the next month. And then the Port of Bellingham, before we adopt it as a part of our comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements, will hold a public hearing. Planning Services also plans to join that Wharf District Master Plan update with the construction of Fisherman's Pavilion because it's currently not in our comprehensive plan. So we would hold a joint public hearing on both of those changes at the same time. And then a couple weeks after the public hearing, you would take action on both of those. And that's it for my update.
All right. Questions, Commissioner Bell?
First and foremost, thank you for taking the public access out of the middle of that industrial area. I can't tell you how that rubbed me the wrong way to have people walking through a place where you're trying to do business. So I fully support the proposed plan, which brings me to the next question. Where is this planning commission meeting and at what time?
It's going to be in
Blaine?
It's City Hall in Blaine. Well, it's actually their new building. It's like on the 3rd floor on H Street. We can get you the address.
Would you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'd love to hear anybody give me an argument for why we should have pedestrians going through an industrial area. So
In their discussions at the last meeting, they had no issue
with the change,
with our recommended change. Their more of an issue was the unrealistic nature on the east side of the Wharf District, and why aren't we changing that now? City staff didn't have time to address an entire rewrite of the Wharf District plan, so they're recommending going forward with just an update and a few additional text changes. And so whether the Planning Commission goes along with that recommendation or not, we're not exactly certain, but.
and I'm less concerned about that, but that's valid. Okay.
Right.
And then if you would, let me know when the planning commission meeting is, and then also when the city council meeting might be.
Will do. It's at 6 p.m. tomorrow night,
Great.
and we'll get you the address.
On the 3rd floor? I know the building, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the section, area 1, where they had the concern if it was realistic to be put in and the time, that's up to the city of Blaine to put those in, not us?
They were project sponsors. There was some discussion about, well, if they eliminated the trails through the railroad property in Pintail Marsh, could a trail fit on port property behind Sundance? And there is an existing easement to the Border Patrol camera where we could maybe continue the interim trail that now, after we built the web locker, which takes people to the boat launch restrooms, the Planning Commission was wondering, well, how do they go east from there? And so they were very interested in maybe getting an interim trail on the east side of Sundance somehow. So there's a possibility of that. Staff thought in lieu of sidewalks on Milholland on the Sundance side, we may be able to participate with an interim trail on the backside of Sundance.
I see it's noted as wetland. Would that have to be a elevated trail, or would that be at grade? Is that unknown?
Well, it's already been disturbed once with the utilities for the Border Patrol camera. So we think we could get, they would be over that easement and it'd be a joint use easement area. We think we could get that. It would have to probably stay gravel. It couldn't be a paved trail.
Okay. Commissioner Briscoe, did you have any questions?
No, I have none.
All right. Could you go to the next slide here, the one that shows the road?
You bet.
So this is the recommendation to get out to Jorgensen Pier, is that correct?
That's correct. And it's showing 2 drive lanes at 12 feet wide, an 8-foot sidewalk, and a bike lane.
And that's the preferred option?
That's the preferred option. Now, the 2 drive lanes, I believe, stop near the intersection at Sigurdsson, and then it's 1 drive lane out to the end pier and back.
Okay. All right. Well, the just pedestrian access only would have been a lot cheaper, but car traffic is going to make that a more expensive project.
Yes, but they did leave the 1 traffic lane out to the end pier for emergency vehicles and other services like that as well.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to see it getting into this plan because that makes me feel more sure that it's actually going to get prioritized for funding. So,
Yes.
good. Okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you.
Motion to approve resolution number 1106-W, delegating certain administrative powers and duties to the executive director.
Commissioners, this is the annual resolution that gives me the authority to do everything I do that I don't necessarily bring to you. The only change in the 1106 this year is an authorization that allows for me to apply for things like stormwater permits and JERP applications. Obviously, anything final we do in that regard is going to come to you for approval, but this allows me to complete the applications without coming to you for approval. Everything else in the 1106, I believe, stayed the same. It has been reviewed by legal, and they've signed off on it.
All right, any questions?
No.
Commissioner Bell?
No issues with any of
Commissioner
that.
Briscoe?
No.
I have no questions either.
A motion to approve resolution number 1106-W, delegating certain administrative powers and duties to the executive director.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yes.
Commissioner Bell?
Yes.
And Commissioner Shepard is yes as well. Passes 3.
Thank you.
A motion authorizing the executive director to execute the third amendment to agreed order number DE 3441 to perform remedial design for required cleanup actions at the central waterfront site.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Ben Howard, Environmental Project Manager, otherwise known as the cleanup folks. So today I'm presenting the action item for authorization of the Central Waterfront Cleanup Site, third agreed order amendment to perform the remedial design for the cleanup action. As shown in the opening slide, the site's located within Bellingham Bay waterfront between Whatcom Waterway and I&J Waterway. So this area has historically been tide flats, prior to dredging and filling in the early 1900s. The initial dredging of the adjacent waterways created the upland areas for industrial use. And early industrial uses included lumber mills, bulk fuel terminal operations, boat manufacturing and maintenance, seafood distribution, foundry operations, and underground storage tank use. In the mid-60s, the middle portion of the site, the area was used for a municipal landfill, and that continued until 1974. Also during this time period, an olivine rock processing facility operated until the early 1990s, and this was in the northern area of the site. So due to the former site operations, the release of contaminants to soil, groundwater, and sediment occurred. It mainly include petroleum and related constituents, heavy metals, and refuse and associated landfill gas. So this slide illustrates the Central Waterfront site, both in 1955, so pre-landfill operations, where the log rafting you can see, and then 1965, and this is the beginning of the landfill use. The Central Waterfront site has been identified by Ecology as a MOTCA cleanup site. So prior to 2006, the site consisted of 4 individual cleanup sites. Ecology consolidated these into the Central Waterfront site to provide a more comprehensive area cleanup. So in 2006, an agreed order was finalized with Ecology to perform a remedial investigation and feasibility study, or an RIFS. And then the first agreed order amendment was developed in 2012 to complete an interim action. And this was to remove petroleum contaminated soil and sediment within the southwest area of the site. And then the RFS was approved in 2018. And also in 2018, a second agreed order amendment was developed with Ecology to develop a cleanup action plan, which presents Ecology's plan to address the contamination at the site. And the cleanup action plan was just recently finalized following a public comment period. So I did just want to highlight that there has been significant amount of cleanup work that's been done in the past. So I'll go through a couple examples of that. So between the early 1990s and 2003, 11 documented underground storage tanks were decommissioned in various areas. The early 1990s and 2001, Chevron conducted independent cleanup work, including removal and bioremediation of soil and groundwater. And then the port also completed an interim action at the shoreline area to address some petroleum contamination. Then in 2000, Georgia Pacific constructed the tissue warehouse project, so it's the F Street warehouse. This was done as an independent action under the voluntary cleanup program. So the landfill area was graded, capped, and a methane control system was installed beneath the warehouse. And during the 2016 Whatcom Waterway Phase 1 cleanup work, an area of sediment contamination adjacent to Central Waterfront was removed and capped. In addition, a groundwater containment wall was installed along the shoreline, including the Maple Street bulkhead. So some significant cleanup work done during the Whatcom Waterway Phase 1. Also in 2016, 2 interim actions were completed at the C Street Terminal and the All-American Marine interim actions. And these were done to address contamination with those development projects. So given all the cleanup that's been done to date, the cleanup action plan was recently finalized and presents Ecology's plan to address site contamination moving forward. Elements of the cleanup action plan include soil and refuse capping, hotspot removal in the southwestern area of the site. That's the little red area. Landfill gas controls for both existing and future buildings, and monitored natural attenuation of groundwater in the C Street area. So that's the area adjacent to Whatcom Waterway. And then contingent groundwater treatment, and this is based on future compliance monitoring, kind of the performance of the monitored natural attenuation and or land use changes that may happen in the future. So the port and city are both signatories to the agreed order amendment. The agreed order amendment includes the scope of work for remedial design and permitting. And the scope of work includes developing the pre-remedial design investigation work plans and then conducting the pre-remedial design or investigation, and develop an engineering design report, which is an ecology required document. And this just adds more detail to the design, and it's the equivalent of a 30% design. And then develop the construction plans and specifications. So pending authorization from the Commission, the next steps in the cleanup process include executing the third agreed order amendment with Ecology and selecting a consultant team for developing the remedial design, which is the next action item presentation. And the cleanup design is anticipated to be completed in 2020, 2021. And following completion of the construction plans and specs, the consent decree is anticipated to be negotiated with Ecology to do the cleanup. And the construction is pending grant funding in the future. So, thank you. And if you have any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions, Commissioner Briscoe?
No, I have none.
Commissioner Bell?
No, I have none either. It was a well thought out plan. Well done.
Thanks.
Where's your coat?
This project's been, these take a lot of years to undertake. It's been studied for, what I read here was 30 years of study has gone into this. And
Up to, yeah, as I indicated, there was 4 individual sites previously. So the port has taken it on since 2006, really. But yeah, you're correct. There's been many years of studying.
Should the public expect that once this cleanup occurs, that this is the last cleanup we do here?
Yes, it is the last cleanup we do. However, there will be, it's kind of like the GP cleanup at the pulp tissue mill. You know, there will be future kind of management as projects come along. But as far as the overall cleanup approach, this is anticipated to be that.
And how are we with the MOTCA funds? Do we have the permits in hand in sufficient order to satisfy Department of Ecology for this project?
Well, this is an upland cleanup project, so it doesn't necessarily require the same permits as an in-water project going through kind of the federal permitting process. So the permitting is a little different. And so, yes, we would have those permits in hand. And also, we do have We do have money set aside right now for that grant funding for the cleanup. It's just not under contract yet.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
A motion authorizing the executive director to execute the third amendment to agreed order number DE 3441 to perform remedial design for required cleanup actions at the central waterfront site.
Commissioner Briscoe,
Yes.
Commissioner Bell,
Yes.
and Commissioner Shepard is a yes as well. Carries 3-0. Thank you. I'm not going anywhere, are you?
Nope, I'm staying right here.
Approve a motion authorizing the executive director to execute a professional services agreement to perform the remedial design and permitting for the central waterfront cleanup site in the amount of $499,700 plus a 10% contingency for a total authorized budget of $549,670.
Yep, so this is a follow-up to the previous presentation for the agreed order amendment. This is to select a consultant team to perform that design work moving forward. And so this is the next step in the cleanup process after executing the agreed order amendment, is to select the consultant to do the design work. And the port advertised an RFPS and received 2 responses for this project. Landau Associates has been selected as the most qualified consultant. And the scope of work includes the initial phases of what's laid out in the agreed order scope of work, and that's to do the pre-remedial design investigation work plans, and then to conduct those investigations and prepare the engineering design report. And then future, it's anticipated that future amendments will adaptively manage project scope and budget. And the project is fully funded through an existing remedial action grant, so this work actually is under contract for grant funding, and also through the AIG insurance policy. So thanks. Any questions on the PSA?
Any questions, Commissioner Bell?
No.
Commissioner Briscoe?
No.
And my only question is, do we have a ballpark for the total cleanup costs for the next day?
Yeah,
next
we had,
stage?
for the construction?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a feasibility study, kind of conceptual level cost right now, and that's about $4 million.
Okay. And we expect a 50-50 match for that
That's
as
correct.
well.
The majority of that is the construction of the cap. Right.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. All right. If no further questions,
Approve a motion authorizing the executive director to execute a professional service agreement to perform the remedial design and permitting for the central waterfront cleanup site in the amount of $499,700 plus a 10% contingency for a total authorized budget of $549,670.
Commissioner Bell? Yes. Commissioner Briscoe?
Yes.
And Commissioner Shepard is a yes as well. Passes 3-0.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Well, we have public comment at 5:30. Yep. Do you want to break before we do other business, or should we just go other business?
Your call.
I'll just have us move forward to other business then.
Yeah.
And we'll start with Commissioner Briscoe. Do you have any other business to bring up?
Not today.
Commissioner Bell?
This is going to go easy. No, I have none.
Okay. I don't have any either, so we are a easy bunch tonight.
Can I ask, can we suspend the 5:30 public comment?
I think we should stick around and have the public comment, but I'd like staff to go home. I'll stick around and take any comment, and if
That's fair.
at least one commissioner would like to stay with me, would probably be good.
Maybe if there's anybody in the crowd that wants to talk now.
Yeah, I think maybe we'll extend the second opportunity for public comment to anyone who's here, and then I'll support Director Fix's idea to wait around here until 5:30 to provide another opportunity. Anyone in the room wish to speak? got almost 45 minutes here. We're entertaining songs and dances at this point. All right, we'll go ahead and take a break and for the next 15 minutes and come back to be ready for public comment.
So we're not adjourning,
No, we're going to take a break, so we'll just call you back if that's okay.
all right, very good.
I'd like to note that Darren Williams is in the audience and did not say anything.